Welcome to Exploring Python's tuple data type with examples. My name's Joseph, and I'll be your instructor for this video course. This course is a deep dive into one of Python's most important but often underappreciated data types, the tuple. If you've spent any significant time writing Python code, you're probably familiar with tuples. You might know that they're like lists, but with parentheses, right? And that they're also immutable? So while those two things are true, you'll soon see that there's a lot more to tuples. In fact, good use of tuples is key to writing clean, performant, and idiomatic Python code. So in this course, you'll learn how to create tuples in Python, access the elements in an existing tuple, use tuple packing and tuple unpacking, apply common operators to tuples, such as the addition and multiplication operators, reap the benefits while avoiding the pitfalls of tuple immutability, and finally, improve the efficiency and readability of your code using tuples. Unfortunately, the one thing you won't learn in this course is whether it's pronounced tuple or tuple. I'm sorry, but that's beyond me. I prefer the sound of tuple, so that's what I'm going with. The code examples you'll be seeing in this course will be using bpython, a custom Python REPL. However, none of the code will depend on bpython, and you're free to follow along using the built-in Python REPL. So if you're ready to dive in, meet me in the next lesson, where we'll start by tackling that fundamental question. What exactly is a tuple? So what exactly is a tuple? In Python, a tuple is a built-in data type, meaning it's always available to you, the programmer. It's a kind of sequence data type, meaning it's a container, and it's marked by values enclosed in parentheses. In fact, as a container type, it's the default in Python, meaning any unenclosed, comma-separated sequence, as long as the syntax is correct, will be handled as a tuple. But wait, there's more! Tuples have a number of other important characteristics that distinguish them from similar data containers in Python. Tuples are ordered. They contain elements arranged sequentially in a fixed order determined at the time of creation. Tuples are indexable, meaning they allow element access by zero-based integer indices. This means that the element at index 0 will be the first element of the tuple. Tuples are sliceable. They support Python slice notation to retrieve a series of elements, which itself will be another tuple. Tuples are immutable, meaning they cannot grow or shrink, and elements cannot be reassigned. But as you'll see in a future lesson, this doesn't mean that tuples will always hold the same data. Because they're unchanging, they're able to be optimized to use less memory. This makes tuples lightweight. They're heterogeneous, meaning they can hold elements of differing types, including other tuples. Tuples are iterable, meaning they conform to the standard Python interface for iterable objects and can be traversed using loops and comprehensions. Tuples are also combinable. They can be combined using concatenation, resulting in a new tuple. And finally, tuples are hashable. As long as the elements inside the tuple are themselves immutable, the tuple can be hashed, which is a requirement of keys in a Python dictionary. We'll be exploring each of these concepts in depth over the next few lessons, with examples in the REPL. But first things first, you'll need some tuples to work with. So your next stop, how to create a tuple. See you there. There's two main ways to create a tuple. The first would be to use a tuple literal. This is where you use the literal syntax of comma-separated values wrapped in parentheses to define a tuple. For example, this line of code creates the variable my_tuple, and within it stores a tuple with the integer values 1, 2. Alternatively, because tuple is the default sequence type, you can omit the parentheses and the results will be the same. The other way to produce a tuple would be to use the tuple constructor. To create a tuple using the tuple constructor, you must pass it an iterable. So in this example, we pass a list containing the integer values 1, 2 to the tuple constructor, which then creates a tuple with those values, ultimately storing it in the variable my_tuple. Now let's go to the REPL and see some more examples. First, open the Python REPL. You'll notice mine looks a little different. Like I mentioned, I'm using bpython, a Python REPL with a few more features than the built-in REPL. But this is purely for cosmetic reasons. So if you're using the built-in REPL yourself, it's not going to make a difference. It's time to create a tuple using the literal syntax. So in this example, you define a tuple literal by starting with an opening parenthesis and adding some values. First, the string, Jane Doe. Next, the int, 25, next the float 1.75, and finally the string Canada. Then you finish off with a closing parenthesis. So you can imagine how this represents a row in a users table in a database. Note how the values are of three different types: string, int, and float. This clearly shows the heterogeneous nature of the tuple. So how about another example? Here you define a variable point holding the integer values 2 and 7. And this is still a tuple. Remember, when using tuple literals, the parentheses are optional. So, can you also create a single element tuple? Yes, but it's a little bit tricky. As you can see here, when you try to define this variable, one word, and you try to make a tuple out of the string hello and no other values, by simply adding parentheses, this is not a tuple, and the parentheses are effectively ignored in this case. What you have to do is add a comma. By adding a comma after the value, you indicate that this is in fact meant to be a tuple. And it works the same without the parentheses as well. The variable oneNumber now holds the tuple with a single value, the integer 42. Now you can try creating a tuple with a tuple constructor. Here, the same tuple point is being defined by using the tuple constructor, and to the tuple constructor, you pass a list containing the integer values 2 and 7. It's very important that you pass an iterable object to the tuple constructor. Otherwise, you will not be able to create a tuple. As you can see, if you try to pass a series of values instead of an iterable, you will get a type error because the tuple constructor requires that it receives only one argument, and that argument should be an iterable. Let's see another interesting quirk of the tuple constructor. Because strings are iterable containers of characters, if you pass a string to the tuple constructor, the output will be a tuple where each element is a character of that string. So in this case, you created a tuple by passing the string Pythonista into the tuple constructor, and the output was a tuple of all of those characters. You may intend to do this, and you may not intend to do this. So this is something to watch out for when you're using the tuple constructor. You can also use the constructor with no arguments. The results are the same. But remember, tuples are immutable, meaning that once you've got your empty tuple, there's not a whole lot you can do with it. So there's really not many use cases for an empty tuple. So now that you're well versed on creating tuples, how can you access the elements inside of them? That's the next lesson, retrieving elements from a tuple. Once a tuple exists, how can you retrieve elements from it? You can access values in a tuple using square brackets. Because tuples are ordered and indexable, single elements can be retrieved by the index starting at position 0. So the element at index 0 will be the first element in the tuple. Because tuples are also sliceable, you can retrieve multiple elements by using slicing, which returns a new tuple. Now let's go back to the REPL to see these concepts in action. Back in the REPL now, let's bring back Jane, whose data could potentially be a row from a database. Jane is a tuple with 4 values, the first being the string Jane Doe, the second, the integer 25, the third, a float 1.75, and the fourth, a string Canada. So if you want to access an individual element, you can select it by index, starting at 0. The first element, Jane Doe, can be found at Jane bracket 0. The second, Jane bracket 1, and the fourth, Jane bracket 3. Now, what if you try to access an element that doesn't exist, such as an index larger than the number of elements in the tuple? That earns you a one-way ticket to Error City. Specifically, this causes an index error because the tuple index is out of range. You can also use negative indexing. However, these count backwards, starting at -1, which represents the last element in the tuple. Jane bracket -1 returns Canada, the string that is the last element in the tuple. Jane bracket -2 returns the third element in the tuple, because that is the second to last element, and so on it goes. But of course, you're still prone to the same errors if you try to access an element by index that isn't there. And yep, another index error. Once again, the tuple index is out of range because there are only 4 elements in the tuple. Because tuples can hold other tuples, you may need to access nested values. Indexing works fine for this as well. First, you need a nested tuple. This is John, a Python developer who's definitely been studying with real Python. The outer tuple contains 4 elements: a string, John, an int, 35, another string, Python developer, and a tuple, which itself contains 4 values: Django, FastAPI, HTML, and CSS, all strings. Looks like John works in web. To access a nested value, you can chain accessors one after the other. Employee brackets 3 brackets 1. This retrieves the 4th element, so the element at index 3, of the outer tuple. That itself is a tuple. And then from that tuple, you retrieve the 2nd element, which is index 1 of that tuple. And so we get the string FastAPI. Now you can try slicing. Again, you need a tuple to work with. Days is a tuple containing the days of the week, all as strings, starting with Monday and going through to Sunday. Just like accessing individual elements, the syntax for slicing uses square brackets. However, between the square brackets, you can use up to 3 numbers separated by colons. The first number is start, the index position where the slice begins. The second is stop, the index where the slice ends, not inclusive of that value. The third is step, the frequency of values to select, starting from the first value. So a step size of 1 would select every value, a step size of 2 selects every second value, etc., etc. To select the first 5 elements, you can use days, brackets, :5. The result is a tuple with the first 5 elements of the original tuple. If you'd like to select a subset with a specific start and end point, you can do that as well by providing 2 values in your slice. For example, days, brackets, 1:4 will return the 2nd through 4th elements of the original tuple as a tuple. So in this case, we get Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And of course, if you'd like to select every other day, for example, you can use a step size of 2. By leaving the start and stop arguments blank, you default to selecting every element, and by having a step size of 2, you select every second element starting from the first. The result is Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. Lastly, you can use this syntax to conveniently reverse a tuple. Days, bracket, ::1. I know it looks weird, but it works. With this, you're setting the start and stop arguments to their defaults and setting the step size to -1. Default start and stop indicate you want the slice to retain the whole tuple, and the -1 step size means you'd like the slice to walk backwards 1 step at a time through the tuple. And like so, the output of the slice is all of the same elements, but in reverse order. Remember, each slice produces a new tuple object. These are not in-place mutations. And speaking of mutations, the next lesson is all about tuple immutability.